In the bustling heart of Seoul, where neon lights danced above crowded streets, lived a young man named Jamal Kim. He was 22, African Korean, with warm brown skin and striking almond eyes inherited from his late mother. Orphaned at the age of 10, Jamal grew up wandering from shelter to shelter. All he had left of his mother was an old, rusted bicycle she once rode to take him to school. To most people, it was nothing but scrap metal. To Jamal, it was his lifeline. With it, he carried out small delivery jobs, food parcels, documents, groceries, earning just enough for a meal or a blanket at night. He had no house, no family, but he carried dignity in his quiet perseverance. One bitter winter morning, as he pedaled through a market, Jamal noticed an old Korean woman sitting by the roadside. Her clothes were neat but outdated, her gray hair pulled into a bun, and her frail hands shook as she tried to hail a taxi. Dozens of people passed her by. Some glanced, most ignored. She caught Jamal's eye. "Son, can you help me? I need to get to Cheongdam-dong," she said softly. Jamal hesitated. Cheongdam-dong was across the city. His bicycle wasn't meant for passengers, but seeing her shiver in the cold tugged at his heart. "I can take you," he said gently. He adjusted a wooden crate behind his bicycle, patted it with his thin jacket, and helped her climb on. Slowly, with aching legs, he pedaled through the freezing streets. The ride took nearly an hour. Drivers honked at them, children pointed, but Jamal kept his head high, weaving carefully until they reached the luxurious district. When he finally stopped outside a tall glass building, he was panting, his hands stiff from the cold. "Thank you," the old woman said, her eyes gleaming with warmth. "You didn't hesitate to help me, even when others ignored me." Jamal smiled faintly, bowing. "It was nothing, Halmiani. I only hope you get home safe." He turned to leave, but the woman called out, "Wait, do you know who I am?" Jamal shook his head. She straightened, and in that moment, her quiet presence shifted into authority. "I am Madame Han Sujin, chairwoman of Han Global Group." Jamal froze. He had heard the name before. She was a billionaire business magnate, one of the most powerful women in Korea. "I disguised myself today," she continued, "to see how the world treats the old and weak. Most people turned away. But you, a young man with so little, gave me everything you had. Your time, your strength, even your jacket." Tears stung Jamal's eyes, though he tried to hide them. "Come with me," Madame Han said. "I do not believe our meeting was by chance. From now on, you will no longer ride deliveries in the cold. I will give you a place to live, an education, and a chance to rise." Jamal's voice cracked. "But why me?" "Because," she said, touching his shoulder, "the richest heart is not the one with money, but the one that never refuses kindness." That night, Jamal wheeled his late mother's bicycle into Madame Han's mansion. It was polished, restored, and hung in her gallery, not as scrap metal, but as a symbol of the day a homeless orphan's compassion changed his destiny. And for the first time in years, Jamal slept in a warm bed, knowing he was no longer forgotten. Life changed overnight for Jamal Kim. The very next morning after his fateful meeting with Madame Han, he woke up in a room larger than any shelter he had ever stayed in. Clean white sheets, warm sunlight spilling through glass windows, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed tea filled the air. He sat up, confused, until a maid knocked softly on the door. "Good morning, young master. Madame Han requests your presence in the garden." "Young master?" Jamal thought, startled. He still wore his tattered jeans and faded hoodie, and the word felt too heavy for someone like him. In the garden, Madame Han sat gracefully with her tea. She waved him over. "Jamal," she began, "do you know why I brought you here?" He shook his head. "Because I see a reflection of my late son in you. He too had a kind heart, but he left this world too soon. I will not let his fortune, and mine, fall into the hands of greedy vultures." Jamal glanced at the mansion. "But I'm just a delivery boy. I don't belong in this world." Madame Han smiled faintly. "Every empire was once built by someone who thought they did not belong. I will teach you." Madame Han enrolled Jamal in night classes for business management while he worked in her company by day, starting at the very bottom. She insisted he learn every detail, delivering files, running errands, listening in on meetings. At first, employees mocked him. That homeless boy? He thinks he can work here. He probably smells like the street. But Jamal never snapped back. He worked harder, stayed later, and absorbed everything like a sponge. The same bicycle that once carried deliveries was now used to ride to classes late at night, his mother's memory pushing him forward. Months later, Madame Han called a family dinner, where her greedy relatives sat stiffly. They had always expected to inherit her billions, and seeing Jamal seated beside her enraged them. One cousin sneered, "Aunt, surely you're not serious about making this stray part of the family?" Another added, "He's half African. Do you think the board will accept him as your successor?" The words stung, but Jamal kept silent. He remembered his mother's advice. Dignity is louder than anger. Madame Han's voice cut through the tension. "You all turned your backs on me when I needed family. Jamal carried me on his back without knowing who I was. That is why he will stand beside me, not you." Her words silenced the room, but Jamal knew it was just the beginning. As weeks passed, Jamal noticed a young woman among the employees, Han Myri, Madame Han's granddaughter. Beautiful, ambitious, and sharp-tongued, she watched him with suspicion. One evening, when most workers had gone home, she cornered him in the office. "Don't think you can take everything just because my grandmother likes you. You're not family. You're a delivery boy with nothing." Jamal met her eyes calmly. "Maybe so, but I'm not here to take it. I'm here to learn." Myri smirked, yet something in his sincerity unsettled her. What Jamal didn't know was that Madame Han had already begun drafting new legal papers. Papers that would name Jamal not only her protégé, but her official heir. But the relatives weren't going to sit by quietly. And soon Jamal's past. The streets, the shelters, the whispered gossip of him being a half-blood orphan, would be used against him in a storm that could either destroy him or prove him worthy. Word spread quickly across Han Global Group. The bicycle orphan was under Madame Han's wing. Some employees grew curious, others jealous, but the most dangerous enemies were within the family itself. One evening, Jamal returned to his small study room in Madame Han's mansion and found a brown envelope slipped under the door. Inside were photos of him as a child, sleeping on subway benches, lining up at soup kitchens, and even being chased away from a store by guards. A note read, "This is your true place. Don't shame yourself by dreaming higher." Jamal's hands trembled as he stared at the images. Shame flooded him, but so did a stubborn spark of determination. "If I give up now, then they're right about me." Madame Han, seeing the opposition from her relatives, decided to test Jamal in front of the board. She gave him a seemingly impossible assignment: manage a failing delivery subsidiary of the company. Most laughed behind his back. How fitting, the delivery boy gets a delivery branch. But Jamal saw it differently. It was a chance to prove himself. He rode out on his mother's bicycle, visiting drivers, warehouse workers, and clerks. Instead of lecturing them, he listened. He worked beside them, loaded boxes with them, and found where money was leaking through corruption. In 3 months, the branch that everyone considered worthless began turning a small profit. Employees respected Jamal, not because of his title, but because he had worked as one of them. At the next board meeting, Madame Han announced, "This young man has done what none of you could. He built from the ground up because he knows what the ground feels like." The room fell silent. Meanwhile, Myri, Madame Han's granddaughter, watched Jamal closely. She had wanted him to fail, but his persistence unsettled her. One late night, she found him still at the office, asleep at his desk over financial reports. A half-empty cup of instant noodles sat beside him. Quietly, she placed a blanket over his shoulders. For the first time, she saw not a rival, but someone fighting harder than anyone she knew. Still, her heart warred with her ambition. If Jamal rose, would she lose her place as heir? Or was there room for both of them? But Jamal's quiet victories only enraged the relatives further. They hatched a plan to expose his illegitimacy and paint him as unfit for leadership. At a grand charity gala, with press and dignitaries in attendance, one cousin stood and sneered into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, do you know who this boy truly is? A homeless stray, the bastard child of a Korean woman and a foreigner. Who should lead Han Global?" Gasps filled the hall. Cameras flashed. Jamal felt every eye pierce him. His chest tightened. For a moment, shame nearly dragged him down again. Then Madame Han rose. Her voice, sharp as steel, cut through the murmurs. Yes, Jamal was born into hardship. Yes, he has known hunger, rejection, and cruelty. But that is exactly why he is more worthy than anyone here. He understands struggle, kindness, and dignity. Qualities money can never buy. If any of you dare question my decision, then know this. I would rather leave my empire to a boy with a bicycle than to jackals in suits. The hall erupted, not in laughter, but applause. Jamal stood there, stunned, tears burning his eyes. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just surviving. He was chosen. But Jamal knew this was only the beginning. Enemies still lurked in the shadows, waiting for him to falter. Myri's eyes lingered on him across the gala hall, no longer hostile, but conflicted. And deep inside, Jamal whispered a promise to his late mother. "I will ride this bicycle as far as it takes me, even if it leads to the boardroom of billionaires." After the gala, the media could not get enough of Jamal. Headlines called him the bicycle heir, the orphan prince of Han Global, and even the new face of Korea's future. But behind the glowing headlines, whispers still spread. Could a mixed-race orphan really lead one of Korea's most powerful empires? Late one night, Myri found herself walking past Jamal's office. He was scribbling furiously over business charts, his brow furrowed, lips moving as if whispering encouragement to himself. She leaned on the doorframe. "You don't stop, do you?" Jamal looked up, startled. "I can't. If I rest too long, I'll remember where I came from. And I don't want to go back." Myri softened. She had grown up with luxury, but in his words, she felt a hunger she had never known. Against her will, admiration stirred in her heart. Yet, the thought of her grandmother giving the empire to Jamal gnawed at her. If she fell for him, would she lose everything, or gain more than she ever imagined? While Jamal slowly earned Myri's respect, the relatives plotted something darker. They hired investigators to dig up Jamal's past. Soon, they unearthed police reports, fights in shelters, nights he had been chased for stealing bread when he was starving. They planned to leak everything to the press. One cousin warned, "If we brand him a thief and a street rat, the world will never accept him as heir." Another sneered, "And if the press doesn't destroy him, we will." Days later, Jamal was summoned by Madame Han. She looked older, more fragile than before, her cane trembling slightly as she sat him down. "Jamal, there is something you must know. Your mother once worked for me." Jamal's eyes widened. "What?" "She was my secretary. Bright, gentle, but poor. When she became pregnant with you, people mocked her, and she left, afraid that I would disapprove. I tried to find her, but she disappeared. Until I met you on that bicycle, I thought I had lost her forever." Jamal's throat tightened. "So, you knew her?" Madame Han nodded, tears welling. "She saved me many times with her loyalty, and now, it seems her son is saving me too." For Jamal, the revelation wasn't just about inheritance anymore, it was about honor. This was not only his fight, it was his mother's unfinished story. One rainy evening, Myri offered to drive Jamal home from the office. The ride was quiet until she finally spoke. "You're different, not just because of where you came from, because you make people want to follow you." Jamal glanced at her. "And you? Do you want to follow me, or stop me?" Myri smirked faintly, though her voice softened. "Maybe both." Their eyes met for a brief, charged moment before she looked away, heart pounding. But before Jamal could explore what was growing between him and Myri, a headline exploded the next morning. Han Global's bicycle heir exposed. Street fights, theft, and lies. Pictures of Jamal's darkest moments flooded the news. The board called for an emergency meeting. Shareholders demanded answers. And in the shadows, the relatives celebrated. But Jamal, standing before the mirror in his modest suit, whispered to himself, "I have carried hunger. I have carried shame. I will carry this too, because my mother's bicycle taught me how to keep moving." He walked into the storm, ready to face them all. The boardroom was filled with tension. Screens displayed Jamal's past. Grainy photos of him scuffling in shelters, stealing bread, being dragged away by guards. The shareholders whispered in disgust. The relatives smirked, and the press outside was already preparing headlines that would bury him. One of Madame Han's nephews sneered, "This is the man you want to lead Han Global? A thief? A stray? He will stain our family name." Jamal stood slowly. His voice was calm, steady, but carried the weight of years. "Yes, I stole bread once, because I was hungry, and no one cared if I lived or died. Yes, I fought in shelters, because when you have nothing, sometimes your fists are the only way to survive. Every scar you see on me is not shameful. It's proof that I refuse to give up." The room went silent. He continued, his eyes steady. "You all mock the bicycle I rode, but that bicycle was my mother's last gift. With it, I earned every meal, carried strangers' burdens, and even brought Madame Han safely home when everyone else ignored her. If that is a weakness, then I accept it. But if survival, dignity, and kindness are weaknesses, then perhaps this company does not deserve me." For a moment, no one moved. Then, from the far end of the table, Myri's voice rang out. "I believe him, because I've seen how he works, how he earns respect, not demands it. He is the leader this company need." Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.